Good morning and welcome to Carnation Crafts. We're live in the Carnation Crafts studio, and as always it is ever lovely to have your company. I'm here today with the lovely Miss Taz, who is producing the show as well, so it's not just me in the room, which is a good thing. So we're coming today with the last of the shows for Held in Our Hearts. This was the collection that we launched this week. It is absolutely stunning. Now this is obviously aimed towards sympathy cards, as many of you are already aware. I know lots of you have already bought this and lots of you have already received it, which is awesome to know. So if you have got it, make sure you're crafting long this morning. The Held in Our Hearts collection is found on the Carnation Crafts website, which is www.carnationcrafts.co.uk. You'll find it under the code number 221101, and it is a whacking great big collection. I'm going to go through the boards with you, but everything that you see on your screen when we're looking at that shot with all of the dies is what you will receive if you're buying that main collection. So you have got Wingbeat, which is the dove. You've got the card shape, which is the hourglass card shape. You've got the bloom of butterflies, the floral charms, wonderful life sentiment, the teardrop flourish, the broken heart dies, and the heartfelt sympathy, and I will show you those all in more detail. Just to let you know also, while I'm here, there is also another set that complements the main collection that kind of goes with it, and those are your ever important nested dies, which are always crazy awesome to have. But these have got one addition in there as well, which is the Hessian Edge texture plate, and I'll go through that with you in a second. This one obviously goes, it does go with the main collection. It's sort of one collection that's been split into two. That's the best way I can kind of describe it, I suppose. And this one is 221110. The show price for this is $129.99. That's free UK P and P. If you're buying anything from today's collections, you need to put in the code HIOH10, and that will give you a 10% discount across the whole show. That also includes the perfect papers that match with this collection entirely. They are absolutely beautiful, and we're going to have actually a closer look at those today as well, because I'm going to be working with them. So all of that comes together to create the Held in Our Hearts collection, and it's a sympathy collection. It's beautiful. It's absolutely breathtaking, this collection. I know lots of you have been on the journey with us as we've brought this forward, and you've seen how stunning it is. It's just so gorgeous, and when you start working with it, just super pretty. Good morning to you all at home. So we've got Suzanne Page, we've got Linda, we've got Karen. Good morning to you all. So I will just say before I get going with the boards that today's show's actually, I'm changing things up. I've decided to take things in my own hands, and I'm changing things. So today is going to be a composition show, and we've done composition shows before. So this is more about, instead of doing finished demos as such, it's just looking at different ways that we can bring it together. But what I decided to do this time is take you right back. So I have got nothing ready for this. I've got finished demos if I need them down here in case I start floundering at some point. But I thought, no. If we're going to say it's a composition show, let's take it back. So I haven't even cut my base cards. We're going to start at the beginning. We're going to do some die cutting. We're going to do the whole shebang. I never die cut on air, so this is a very, Ms. Taz is crossing her fingers in the corner. It's very unusual for me to do it this way. But I feel like I can't keep saying to you, this is how I do composition if I sit with you with pieces that are ready. I want to take you through the process as a beginner as such to work the way to an end card. So I hope that's okay with everybody. Good morning, Jill. Good morning, Pauline. I hope you're okay. Loving the card shape and the Hessian nested dies. Aren't they beautiful? It's a really stunning collection, this. I'm very bowled over by it. I mean, I am by most of their stuff. They're incredible, aren't they? Oh, to have that brain. Let's have a look at these boards. So we have got the gorgeous hourglass card shape here, which is all of your pieces for your mats, your layers, your base card, your filigree, which is this piece that you see here, and then all of the layers that we've got for the nested pieces that sit up in that teardrop shape, which can be used independently or they can be cut into. So it depends which way you want to do it. We can create apertures, which is super useful to have. And we'll be looking at this today in different ways as well. Then we've got your floral charms, really beautiful floral charms. So you've got the little pieces at the bottom that work kind of in the same way as a charm bracelet, when you've got all the little aspects that sort of clip as such. Now the really joyful thing about this is if you do have any of those little lobster clasp charms at home, you can actually use these. What you could do is laminate them. They would be really pretty done, and then cut them out that way with laminate on the top, and it would just be super sweet. But you've also got this piece where we can plait that edge, we can create woven edges, we can create full woven panels. You can do an awful lot just with that one strip. That's the power of Carnation, and that's why they're so clever, because these pieces, where you look at it and you sort of discard it because we're next to all of this, which is stunning, these pieces are actually your fundamentals. They're the things that create the ability to do so much with the cards that we make. Then we've got wing beat. I love wing beat so much, not least because it's beautiful, but also because, again, like I've said all week, you can clip this piece away and use it as corner elements for different cards. Take the wing, take the dove away, and say that you're working with Fresh Blooms, or you're working with Work and Play, or one of those older collections. You can use these for the corners of those cards, and that's what makes it so powerful, isn't it? Makes it so pretty. But you also get your outer die. That is a split die. Split dies can be used as a whole die by just placing them together on your die cutting machine, or you can just use half and have an over the edge card. There are instructions in the Carnation Crafters group on how to do that if anybody's interested in having a go. They're super fun and they look amazing. We've got the broken heart charms here. I love this. You've got that little crack down the side. Now, if you pull those together, pull the two sides of the heart together, it will become almost like a broken heart, which is really sweet. Jill says she's got everything crossed for us for die cutting live. Oh, Jill. Listen, guys, if I can make mistakes, it's better to do it with you guys than it is to do it on CNC when there's lots of people who have never seen me before. So at least I'm doing it with friends. Miss Taz is really crossing her fingers. I break every single die cutting. But I've had this little workhorse sitting here for years, and I use it daily. We're just going to keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. But I'd rather make the mistake with you guys than make it live on air at CNC. So, you know, I'm using you as guinea pigs. We've got our little flourishes here, which are so sweet. I don't know what it is about this blue one. I'm really drawn to it. And every time I show this board, I always say this one. Sometimes I'm just naturally drawn to something, and this is one that I am. And I don't know if it's the shape. I don't know what it is about it. And I don't know why I feel differently about it. It's exactly the same one, cut in a different colour. But for some reason, every time I see this board, my eye goes straight to that. So that means it's a powerful piece. You can put the little flowers on the inside of them, build them up into a decoupage element. You've got these, which I think are lovely snowflakes. If you turn those so they're diamond shaped, just really pretty snowflakes, right? And then you've got your extra little flourishes as well. We've also got your bloom of butterflies, which I think is so powerful and so pretty. So you've got all your little templates that you can print off. Those are the vignettes that we get from the Carnation Crafts website, so www.carnationcrafts.co.uk, and you have got all of your little butterflies here, and you can create them on these templates just by sticking them on top. So super sweet, and you can do those in A4 and they look amazing. We have shown some finished samples of that. If you're coming here for the first time and you haven't seen this collection before, please do remember that all of our shows are on YouTube and you can catch up at any time. So go to the Carnation Crafts TV channel on YouTube, make sure you subscribe so you get notifications when we go live, and it will give you all of the back shows that we've done for all of the collections. So there's a lot of learning within tutorials and demos on there as well. The last two we've got for you on this collection are the sentiments. So we've got With Heartfelt Sympathy, which is just very beautifully done. I love the fonts they choose. They're clever with fonts. Suzanne says, I've got everything crossed for you, Carla. You guys are so ace, honestly. There's every chance that today is going to be a disaster, but we'll laugh about it together. Also, just to add at this point, if you get any weird camera angles, Miss Taz has got some false nails on, and they're about this long, and she can't do anything for herself, so she keeps asking me to do things for her. And if she hits the wrong button and you start seeing, like, you know, pictures of the wall or something.
I've done well so far.
She has done well, so she's like this, because they're like this long. She's trying to prove that they're not long, and they're like this long. Anyway, there you go. So the second one we've got is Celebrating a Wonderful Life. So these have got the panel at the back here as well. If you can see the red sitting there. So you can lift it. Now, sometimes there's a power in a sentiment of having it just sat flat like it is there, or raising it. It's either way, and I know when I first started using Carnation, I kind of felt, nobody had ever said it, but I kind of felt like I needed to use the panel at the back. It just felt like, oh right, okay, that's that natural process. It's an option because sometimes it's more powerful to do it just like that. sometimes it's more powerful to raise it. It's one of those playways. Good morning, Vera. Hope you're well. So one of those playthings that we can do that allow us to change and shift the natural look of the finished product that we're making. So it's a tool. Right, let's have a quick look through these nested, and then I'm going to go and try. I'm going to go and try and demo for you. That doesn't sound very confident, does it? Right, let me just put these where they should be. Right, here we go. So you've got your Hessian plate here. So this is clever. It's an amazing background just as it is. Just like that. I think that's beautiful on the back of a card. Obviously we can cut into it. Now, if you go through and you start using your Hessian nested dies, and these are amazing, and it's obviously why it comes together, what we then get is a piece of what essentially looks like fabric. Now obviously it's not, it's card, but it looks like fabric. It's so clever, and that's just by using the two combined. In order to achieve that, what you would do is cut that out using the vignette, and then you would cut out one of these using that. So you would put your die on top of that card, and that's how we create those different shapes. So super easy to do. It's just a double processing, so we go through once and then we go through again, and you can create these gorgeous pieces. So that's your Hessian plate, and then I'm just going to very quickly run through these because I think the demo is going to be slightly longer this morning. So you've got your diamond Hessian nested. Say it again, nested dies are always going to be your most important dies. I was having this discussion with Taz, I think yesterday, and the reason being obviously is because it's everything, isn't it? It's your sentiment, your base card, it's your mats, it's your layers, it's your toppers, your stoppers on easel cards. Everything with a nested die can be utilized in so many ways. So it's always nesteds that I'm attracted to, and always have been. These are your gorgeous DL ones. So again, great for your backing papers. The thing I love about DL nested dies more than anything are these thinner strips, because you can look at them and go, where would I use them? But they're so good for doing your corner elements. So imagine this one with another one going across in an L shape with a rose in the corner and some foliage coming out. You'd have this really beautiful texturing that goes down your card. A couple of mats and layers with some of those backing papers. Incredible. Then we've got your rectangulars, which are super sweet. This is the one that probably most people will use the most often because it's your generic card shape at the back. So it makes sense that that would be the one that you use the most often. And it's super pretty, super pretty. I've got one here. It's got a bit of a grease mark on it. It's not one I'll be using in demo, but it's just to show you the size of it and the format, that how it comes out. Just ignore the little, there's like a little paw print. I don't know what I've been eating, but Lord only knows. So yes, you can see how that all comes together. Then we've got my favorite, which is the circle, because I just think texturally it's beautiful to look at. Aesthetically, it's beautiful to look at. It's got a real wow factor to it. And you know what? If you were to do all of those layers and do them in, say, orange, yellow, white, orange, yellow, white, orange, yellow, white, to create a sun on a card would just be beautiful, with just a sentiment across, say, and have a great day or something along those lines. Really gorgeous card, really simple, but that kind of sunset, those gorgeous bright vivid colours. Then you've got your square. Again, this will be used a lot, and it can be used for, well, all of them can be used for easels, but you will use the square a lot. Especially when we get to the smaller ones, because you'll use them for sentiments a lot as well. And the same goes for your oval, which again is just so pretty to look at. So gorgeous set. That is your Hessian Edge collection. It's all your nesteds, and it's super pretty. Now, as you can see, my desk is in complete chaos, but I just think, while I'm saying to you all the time, like I say, composition wise, you know, this is how I work composition wise, and I don't really have an idea of what I'm doing when I'm doing composition. Unless I put my money with where my mouth is, that means nothing to you guys, and it shouldn't mean anything to you guys. Normally when I'm doing comp, I will have my base cards cut, mats and layers cut, and I was going to do that and get it sorted yesterday, and then I thought no, and I said to Taz when she arrived this morning, I'm changing things. I'm going to do the cutting on air, including even don't laugh, including cutting and scoring. I'm going to do the whole thing. Let's start from the beginning. If you're a beginner to card makers, and I know loads of you have come to us recently at Carnation and you're just starting, so let's take it back, let's strip it right back. How do we make a Carnation card from beginning when we've got no real clue other than die cutting where we go with the pieces? Most people who are card makers know how to die cut with a vignette. Those of you who don't know what a vignette is, it's the artwork that we get from Carnation Crafts. And to get that artwork, we go to www.carnationcrafts.co.uk. When we go to the Carnation website, there's loads of stuff on there. There's a digital marketplace. There's a deal of the day every day. You can see the TV channel. There's a little tab for inspiration where you'll see loads of cards that have been made. There's contact details to contact Carnation Crafts. You can see also there is a My Account. If you start to download vignettes and you create an account with Carnation, you don't have to, but if you do, it will remember everything you've ever downloaded and it will all be kept in your account. And that means you can go back again and again. There's also a shop section on there as well. So lots of different areas to go and explore on the website. If you want to get the artwork, you go to downloads and then free downloads, and in the right hand side there is a space where you can say collections. You put in Held in Our Hearts for this one and it brings up everything that you can get that goes along with the dies. So these are all the artwork. It's your backing papers, your inserts and the vignettes. And a vignette is the piece of art that we pop our die on top and we put that through the machine and it cuts it for us. The only difference between Carnation Crafts vignettes and anything else that we might know alternatively, such as Charisma, is that Carnations have got a double-sided, a mirrored vignette. That means when you download it, you can just see a couple at the bottom there where it says Wonderful Life and Heartfelt Sympathy, and the heart vignette have got a black line down the centre. We fold it on the black line, spray glue the inside and fold it together so it becomes a piece of A5. Pop your die on top and pop that through the machine, and your artwork, your die cut, will have the image both on the back and on the front. So that's the first bit of housekeeping done and dusted. And now we're going to go for the fun bit. Right, Miss Taz. You've got your toes and your fingers crossed. I'm just going to play. Right, so I've got my die cutting plates here ready. I've got my cut tidy ready. And I've got my papers ready. So sorry about the mess, but that's a natural process of crafting. I've got my perfect papers, and I've got some of the backing papers. I've actually got a ton of these somewhere else in the room, but I did just print out some of my backing papers so I can choose which colourway I want to go with, how I want to do it. The backing papers are stunning, right? Look at these, look at that. That one I'm completely smitten with. I think that is so pretty. So I've got all of my bits. Then in front of me, you won't be able to see particularly, but I've just got bags of all of the vignettes. Okay, this is all your artwork. There's loads of stuff all around me, and I've just put them all out. So we're just going to craft. I hope that's okay. I've got some gold card in case I choose to go that way. I've got my 240 GSM. Now, the reason I've got 240 is because one of the things that I'm going to cut, and it might be the only thing I cut, but one of the things I'm going to cut is this. Okay, now whenever I'm cutting, I will tell you that when I'm doing this at home, as in when I'm just sat and I'm crafting, I'm not going to do it on air, and I'll tell you for good reason why. If I was cutting this for demo on television, or if I was cutting it for a card to give somebody, I would always, without fail, cut it on the 350, not on the 240. Now, the reason that I would always cut it on the 350 is because I like mine to be sturdy. So it means something to me. So this, for instance, is on a 350. And I always do it on 350. It's personal preference, but I like the fact that it's solid and that it doesn't bend and that I'm not getting creases in it. I like it to look really smooth at the end. And that's just to do with me and the way I craft. The reason I'm not going to do it on air with you is that when you do something that is very delicate with filigree like this and you put it through on a 350, even using cut tidy, I'm going to put it through my machine probably 3 times just to make sure it's cut all of those edges, because it's going through a whacking great big piece of card. And I can't always guarantee it's going to cut on first pass, which is why I won't be doing it for the demo today, because I want to sort of, obviously, I don't want to keep putting something through the machine. What I should have done theoretically for demo is do it on a 120, but let's go 240. So for this, I'm just going to cut it in white first. So that's my 240 cardstock. I've got my die, I've got my plates. You have to excuse my plates, they're very old. Yes, Miss Taz.
We've just had a question from someone on YouTube.
Yes.
What GSM do you put the backing papers on, please?
I always have trouble with this because I feel like I'm trying to sell you something and I'm not. I can only tell you what I do as a crafter myself and as a crafter who's worked with Carnation products for 2 years. So I hope that I'm putting that in as a caveat first. My backing papers, for the same reason as I've just explained for the 350, I personally always do my backing papers on the 220 Pro Print. It's choice. I know a lot of people like to do it on the 120 Pro Print. I know some people who don't want to do it on Pro Print at all. The first thing that I'll say to you is Pro Print makes a difference. And I'm not just telling you that willy-nilly. Pro Print makes all the difference to the colour. It's meant to. It doesn't absorb colour, so it's really vivid. There's 3 different sizes or GSMs of Pro Print with Carnation. There's the 120, the 170 and the 220. The 120 is my most used. I use 120 all the time and it's for my vignettes. Always do my vignettes on 120 because I personally always use the mirrored vignettes. Always. Doesn't matter whether they're background pieces or not. I would always rather have that mirrored vignette because I cut mine in advance. So you can see I've got bags of them here. So it means that I don't have to pick and choose between which ones I was doing. If, however, I had no interest in using mirrored vignettes and I just wanted to use single-sided ones, then I would be cutting those on the 220 because I would want it to be thicker. So of the 3 papers, for me personally, the one I don't use, I'll be totally honest with you, I don't use 170. I just don't use it. I use 120 for my vignettes and I use 220 for my backing papers. And the reason I use 220 for my backing papers is because the same thing. I don't want it to crease. I don't want it to bend. If I'm using something very flimsy like a 120, I can't control that paper because just by putting my thumb on it, I can crease it. You know, it's just paper, isn't it? It's very thin paper. When we're getting into the 220, we're getting more to cardstock. So it's got that kind of heavier feel to it. I hope that helps. It's the best explanation I can give. So I'm just opening some Cut Tidy here. I didn't bring my normal Cut Tidy up because mine is a rag. I use my Cut Tidy to death and you should too. There's absolutely no reason why you should be using Cut Tidy a new piece every time. Now when you get Cut Tidy, the instructions on it will say to you that you are supposed to, let me show you. If I just take this die off here, when you're pulling your dies away, I'll still probably tear it, but bend the card away from the die. Can you see where I'm doing it this way? Bend the card, not the die. And it should release much easier. They use what is essentially red liner tape to hold them down, and they hold firm, but it's to stop them getting damaged in transit. So if they did it any lighter, we would get damaged dies, so they have to do it the way they do it. Right, so I have got my 240 cardstock here. Now, normally speaking, you would just whack a die on top and chuck it through and hope for the best. Now, when they tell you to use Cut Tidy, the thing that they tell you to do is to take the Cut Tidy, open it where that crease line is, pop your paper to the crease line, pop your die on top, and put the other piece of Cut Tidy over it. So you're creating a sandwich. Now, people, I know some of you die cut this way, some of you die cut. I always do it from the top. It's just the way I work, and we work differently. Now, I'm going to tell you not to do that with Cut Tidy, or I'm going to say that you don't have to do that with Cut Tidy, because to me, you can get double for your money by just using it as a piece of A4. And that is how I would always use it. What we're doing here is creating an extra shim. Now you wouldn't have it on top because you would need it to be at the bottom. It needs to hit the plate, but I just wanted to show you that I would use it as an A4 piece. So when I'm working, I always have, you can see I've got red tape around my plates. It's just to keep my plates together so I don't have to keep, because you can see it's all worn away. This is how often I use this. So I just do it so that I don't have to keep putting that plate on because it annoys me when they're all separate. So then what I often do is tape a piece of Cut Tidy to my cutting plates at the bottom. And I will just keep it taped down because I use it again and again and again and again. I never take it off, and I never ever cut Carnation dies without cut tidy unless I'm cutting acetate. That's the only time I change. When I'm using acetate, I don't use cut tidy, but I will always put a piece of card underneath the acetate. So I'm just going to place that on top of my cut tidy, place this down, work towards the edge. Now I know there's sweet spots in different places. I know that in mine, and people will tell you it's the same for each machine, as in, oh, your sweet spot for a cut and boss is in the middle, or it's at the right hand side. Do you know what? Mine's in the centre. I know it's in the centre, but I don't like wasting paper. I would rather cut mine here and put it through twice than waste the rest of a piece of paper. It's just the way I am, but we're all different. That's just the way I craft. So pop my next plate on top, push the two, and put it through. My trusty little workhorse. I've had this for years and years. Well, actually I haven't. I've had it since I started Carnation. They sent it to me because they were all like, do you want to come and die cut with us? And I was like, I don't know what die cutting is. Never heard of it. So they sent me one. Right. For those of you at home that are brand new to die cutting, if you've got a brand new die cutting machine, often the best thing that you can do is when you take this out, so you've put it through, turn it round and put it back through. Just because you're guaranteed the cut. I don't with everything I'm doing. You can see how much I cut. I cut so often, so I don't often do that. But I'm just trying to explain to you at home some of the best formats that I've found over my time of crafting. Because do you know what? We've got the hour, let's use it. Now, normally you'll hear it crack. If you're not getting that crack, it means that you don't have enough shim. And if you don't have enough shim, it means there's not enough pressure going through your plates. So the metal is not cutting through the paper. If that's the case and you find that no matter how many times you put things through, nothing is cutting, then try and put a piece of paper between your plates, and that will help you give an extra shim and it will sort it. Now, if I pull this away, what you'll see with my cut tidy is that I have a perfect outline of what I've just cut, but it hasn't cut through my cut tidy. The cut tidy is still in one place. Would I be bothered about putting something else on top of that? No. How many times would I use a piece of cut tidy? Probably about 40 to 50 times before I changed it for another piece of cut tidy. I usually at the point when my cut tidy itself has torn, where it's got holes in it and it's no longer really usable. So I just keep going and going and going with it until it is no longer usable, and then I start with another one. But like I say, I never cut without cut tidy. It's so much easier for me to do it with. So when I take this out, because I've used cut tidy, can you see it's kept all of my pieces safely sat there and everything else has come out? That's what cut tidy does. It's not guaranteed to do it every time. Miss Taz looks so impressed with that.
No, I like taking the paper out. No.
Don't do that with your dies, by the way. So what you're doing, obviously, then, is when you've got the little pieces that are sitting, the best thing you can have is a brush, and I just brush mine through. I usually have a bin liner sitting next to me at all times, and I just brush into my bin and get rid, because if you leave those pieces inside your die and you go in with another piece of cardstock, it's going to stop the cut, and you don't want that cut. You need that transition piece, so don't stop your cut. Okay, so make sure you empty it first, because even little pieces, like I've just got a little bit of white stuck there, that will stop the crisp edge of your cut. If we're going to go to the lengths of using cut tidy to make sure we have that crisp edge, and then we leave little pieces like that in our die and just cut on top, it will still cut, but you'll get little marks on your paper and various different things that you don't want. Now I'm just going to brush all this down here, and the cleaner can shout at me later because the cleaner is me. So I can shout at myself later on. Now, what I'm going to do is also cut that, just so you can see the difference, in gold cardstock. Same thing, my cut tidy is on the bottom, and I'm going to go through. So, placing this at the side, I love this. And I'm just going to place it. Now, the reason I'm doing this is just to show you, with a simple change of paper, how we create something completely different. I love playing. When I'm doing demos, part of the pleasure of doing demos, because bear in mind for a launch I might have to do 30 cards for every launch. Part of the pleasure with that is playing with texture, height, papers. So again, turn it round. I always cut on my base cards twice. The other reason that cutting twice is so important as well is it might cut perfectly the first time, and with Carnation, see, not all dies are made equally, and Carnations are really kind of deep the dies, so they give you a really good cut every time. But I love that really beveled edge, so if I go through twice, I know that beveling's coming through. So if I'm making a card for somebody else, I want that sort of extra visual. So again, we pull this forward, that'll pull straight away. So nothing's left on my cut tidy because I don't need that to happen. And then I'm just going to pull it through. All my little bits are weeded and everything sits within there. Now, do you want to do it, Miss Taz? She's so excited. It's her birthday tomorrow, so I'm letting her play. There you go, sweet girl. You can poke those out. So I'll leave her to have some fun in the background. But I just cut stuff on her and it worked. So that's all exciting. Right, so I'm just going to put these over here and get rid because I no longer need them. And then I've got my mats just where I want them there. So I have managed to get a little bit of something on there just between cutting it and actually pulling it off. It'll be some makeup from somewhere or a bit of my breakfast. I have no shame. So you can see the difference here and how that works up. Now, if I have got a backing piece and I place that on, it looks really pretty, okay? Now, if I change that to the gold, it's completely different. So when I'm working with composition, the first thing that I would notice with these two, if I place, what can I do? If I place it that way and that way, so we can see the difference. Now I've got an overhead light on this, so the gold is quite garish. It's not in real life, but it looks quite garish on the cameras and on the light in there. The first thing I'm going to notice when I'm doing this compositionally wise, and colour is really important. Carnation take care of colours for us, so we get perfect papers that match exactly what we're doing. So we don't need to worry about colour clashes. If we start to diversify and go away from Carnation's colour, and there's no problem with that, but as you can see with the gold, when I'm putting that on the sandstone, there's a problem. The colours don't work. The gold is interfering so much with that sandstone, can you see? Because the colours tonally are incorrect. You've got one that is a warm colour, one that's a cold colour, one that's quite a bright colour, and one that is a very dulled down matte colour. We've got shiny and matte. So we have problems with it visually. And this is always what we're looking at when we're playing. Now, if, however, I take a piece of white cardstock and place that gold, now we're cooking on gas. Now we've got something that is incredibly vivid, incredibly bright, and incredibly beautiful. But I would have trouble working on that, just as the piece is on its own. But it is gorgeous as a background. That's where my difference would come in. I'm more likely to work with the paler colour if I work white on white. Look at them together. So if I use that as, say, a background, as a matte unlayer, then you can see how pretty that is because I'm calling that tone. I'm calling that vivid, vivid, bright gold, and I'm just drawing it back to itself. So composition-wise, that's where I would be going with that. That's what I would be thinking about. So let's start trying to build up a base. So working with 350 instead of 250. I always work with a perfect smooth because I can stamp on it. So Carnation's Perfect Smooth is really good for stamping. So I'm just going to take two pieces of this. I never bin my offcuts. I always keep my offcuts because I use them for strips going across my card. So even with the whites, I keep them because I can pull them out and create like little borders and little strips as well. So just bear with me. There's not a lot of room in this studio, so I'm kind of pushing myself cramped in, and you'll have to bear with. So let's cut down some sizes. Oh, it's a fluster. Right, so I'm going to work on an 8x8. The reason I'm choosing 8x8 is simply because it's the most generic card shape. And it just makes sense to do it on an 8x8. So, 8x8. There. Now, I want some perfect papers to go at the bottom. When we're using perfect papers, we start to make decisions very early on. This is the first part of the decision-making process. The first part is what size card do I want to make? The second part is what colour tone am I going to work with? What backing papers do I want to use? Often I'll choose my backing paper and work backwards from there. It depends where you're going really and what you want to achieve. But looking at the perfect papers for this collection, which are so pretty, I can tell you categorically, looking straight off, I know which backing paper I want to use, and I know it's that rose pink. I also know the rose pink is slightly too dark to work on top of just on its own. So what I'm going to do, sorry, let me move these over so you can see. What I'm going to choose, I need something that's probably going to be darker, first of all, than the original backing paper. So I'm going to choose my darkest paper in the pink. First of all, that's going to be my first mat, and then I want to put something on top of my backing paper. So my backing paper essentially is going to be my layer, and then I'm going to have the lighter colour on top. So I'm going to work backwards that way. I hope that all makes sense to you. Just pop that in there so it's not in the way. So the first thing that I'm going to do is chop 1/2 inch. So I know my base card is 8, so I'm going to go 7.5 on this one, and just pull that through. 7.5 on this one. That's my first mat done. Now I've got decisions to make. Do I want to incrementally keep going down in the same size, or do I want to start making my layers smaller? So I've got like 1/4 inch instead of the 1/2 inch that I cut. How much do I want to change my center stage? Where do I want my staging to be? How do I want that to look? So I'll take my backing paper. I am going to, first of all, just cut my edges off. So I've got this white border, get rid of those. And I usually do this process first. Usually as I'm printing out my backing papers, I cut my white edges off. And then I know I'm just working with what I've got. So that's got rid of those. Just put those down there. So I've got my backing paper here. I need to be careful because the love heart is a specific shape. So I need to make sure it's the right size, as far as I don't want to be cutting it the wrong way around. So I know that I've gone 7.5. So actually on this one, I am going to go to 7. I'll take it another 1/2 inch. So 7 there, and then 7 there. So I'm starting to build. You can see how we're building up. Now, I've said to you before lots of times, we all craft differently, but I can't work on something that's dark. Now, part of that, I don't know whether part of that is to do with the fact that I do have ADHD and my brain just screams and goes, no, 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 there's too much happening, there's too much happening. And we all see things differently. But I know I can't work on that. And so for me to produce, I would need to just, I need to cool it. There's too much going on for me. So I need to have another layer that's light and that has nothing on it so that I can work with the vignettes. So I'm using it as a background. So what I'll do then is take that. So the one that I just cut was 7. I'm going to go and take this to 6.5. So this is my perfect paper in that very light tone. So that should have all of those cut. I'll just place my trusty caterpillar down and go in. Make sure I like what I've got and make sure it looks soft. See how pretty that is? Now see if I take that away. I don't know if you all see the same as I, but to me I'm just like, no, 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 I can't, it's too much. Cool it down. I've got this really lovely playground now. And so to me, it's just that calming touch where I can say, okay, I've got such a pretty border. There's so much potential now. And it's just about how you see. I know not everybody's the same, so I hope that makes sense to you guys at home. Then I'm going to take my base, one of the pieces from my base card, and I'm just going to cut all my... It's very weird, you seeing all my stuffs, because this is how I work continually. So I know I'm at 8, I'm going to score at 1/2 inch. Nothing too excessive there. Place that down. And always, always, I've got my score line. I can see my score line perfectly. That's not a problem to me, but I always just give it a little shove. And that's before I ever finish my demo. I know I do it when I'm on air as well, but I always make sure that that's sorted. Then I've got my red liner. And it's just a case of obviously pushing that through. I always push it as near to the crease as I can. and I don't worry about it too much because it gets covered, but it is just there to adhere the two together. Now, I know most of you know how to do all of this, so apologies if I'm teaching Granny to suck eggs, but you know what? There's always people watching who have never, ever created a card before. So we're just taking it in that way. Hello, Carol Mama Wilson. So let me move some stuff out of the way so we can see where we're going. And I will actually do the stuffs if I can find my pokey. Take that off. Pull it towards, shuffle, place in, and there's my main, that's my main stage. And then we start to play with height and dimension. So I have got a 3mm and I've got a 5mm. You can see the difference between the two and the cat hair that's stuck to them. So I get choices here. You can see that that's a massive difference. When I talk to you about the difference in foam tape, actually that might be a 2mm, you know. When I talk to you about the difference in foam tapes, this is what I'm talking about. It's that huge choice that we make, because it is a choice. Because when I use 5mm and it's so thick, I never use it willy-nilly. Because if I was to put that on every single mat and layer, my card's going to be like a great big sandwich. You know, it's going to be this tall. I don't want that. But I do want it to have impact. So it's about choosing, okay, where is that going to be best dispersed? Where am I going to get the most impact from it? It's certainly not going to be from my mats and layers. So mats and layers, if I want some height on those, obviously if I don't, I can just use finger lift tape. But if I want some height, I can use a 1mm or a 2mm and kind of build up gently so I'm not in your face with it too much. So that's what I'm going to do with this. We're going in with a 2mm. Always the 3 stripes for me. So place it down, cut, all of the fluff. Look, honestly, if ever you do receive a card from me, any of you, you will notice that half of my cats, some of my children, parts of me are all attached in. So let's start building. Same as always, I always make my tabs. So I should tell you that when I talk to you on air about doing tabs and all of the rest of it, when I'm at home and making cards, I still do the same thing. It's not something I just say for television. It is actually how I craft. It's how I get everything in my head the right way. Now this one has got the love hearts facing obviously down the correct way. I know that when I put those tabs on, I need to work with that upright. So in order to put my tape on, this is going to sound back to front, but it makes sense to me. I need to turn it that way. So it's sideways because I need to put it on so it's the right way around. I hope that makes some sense to somebody out there. So just placing through. Same again. Same again. Sorry about all the basics, guys, but do you know what? I really wish somebody, when I first started learning card making, had just sit and gone, do you know what? This is how you put your tape on. Because it seems so obvious when we've been making cards for a long time. But if you're brand new into it, it's not quite as obvious. Hold on. Look, this is karma for me taking the mick out of Miss Tiz Taz's nails. So going through here, I'm just roughly getting this right because I can't go completely overhead. Place, pull. Now, this one, I've got a choice. Do I raise it or do I keep it flat? How do I raise it? This is the one I'm going to concentrate on the most. The rest of them I know I just need my mats and layers. I'm okay with how that is. This one I now start to make decisions about, and the reason I'm going to make decisions about this is, if I raise this high enough, there's every chance I could put an element underneath it. I could just slot it underneath. If I put it flat or if I've got it very low, I'm not going to be able to do that. So always with my top layer, I tend to, if I can, put higher foam tape on it because I've got more options at the end. And when I'm doing it, I tend to use shorter amounts of foam tape nearer to each other. So what I mean by that obviously is if I put my 5mm on this and I make those little pieces just a little bit shorter, into the centre for support, and then one more up at the end, just a little bit shorter. I've got free edges. Do you see what I mean? I've got playway all the way around. That means if I want to, I don't have to, but if I want to, I can just pop something underneath. So creating my tabs, get this to where I want it to be. Like I say, I'm playing rough because I can't lean over, but push, pull. Now I've got that height, and I've got that delicious height. So if I want to take a corner element, I could just slot it and hang it over the edge there as a little bit of extra. You know, you've got that little bit of extra oomph that just sits. It just gives me a little bit more theatre. There's a little bit more space to play. So I like that kind of element to it. Now let's go back to these pieces that we cut. If I know it's a little bit longer. If I place that on there, I would say for me personally, with the gold, there's just a bit too much there for me. Now the reason I would say that is because the pink is very strong. If I was going to use the gold, I would say that I would always use it against the blue backgrounds. The reason I'd use it against the blue backgrounds is because it's a cooler tone. So the blue is cool and the gold is cool. I'm just seeing if I can find a piece of the blue perfect so I can show you that. I might not have it here. Just bear with. I've got so many pieces of paper, Miss Taz, I don't know whether I'm coming or going anymore. Let me just see. I'll just use one of these so I can show you. If I take the pink away altogether, I would use it on the cooler blue, not on that dark tone. But can you see how when we use it with the blue, we're using cool tones together? So it doesn't have that whoa moment going on. If I use it against a pink tone, a darker pink tone, the heat against the cold, it doesn't work. I need cool with cool. There's too much. I hope that makes sense to people. It's always about your hues. It's not just about colour. It's about thinking about your cold and hot tones. Where do they work? Where are we taking away and where are we adding? And that's the way I see it. So for me, gold is beautiful on blue. And we know that, don't we? It's a royal colour, gold and blue. It's royal, gold and red, they're royal colours. It's got those tones to it. If I start putting it with a pink, there's a clash. So, or if I start putting it with the sandstone, the gold's too much, it overtakes everything. So it's just about working out those colour tones. And that's why perfect papers are so important, right? Because I don't need to think about it at all. I could put any of those colours. I could put the blue straight on top of those pinks. And already there's no clash because they've done it for me. I don't need to worry if I'm clashing. I've already got an amazing piece that I can work with. So I hope that is making some sense. Obviously, when you craft your own way. Now, I want a little strip just going down the bottom of this, I think, because I'm so in love with this backing paper and it seems such a shame to cover the whole thing up. So I know that I cut that through at 8, 7.5, 7, 6.5. So I don't want it to be the same length. I want it to be a little bit shorter. So 6.5 is going to then take me down to, let's say, 6.25. Let's go 6.25. And let's cut it down for the sake of playing. I'm going to think, I'll go for, it's always best to cut too much and be able to cut a bit more off. I'm going to go for 1 3/4. Let's try that. See how that fares up. Yeah, I quite like that. I'm okay with that. That's pretty. Let's go with that. Decisions, always decisions. It's always about where are we going and why are we doing it. If you can't justify it, don't do it. Simple as that. That's the fastest lesson I learnt when making cards. If I can't justify why I'm doing it, then don't do it. It took a lot for me to learn that. Because I'm somebody who's very much, well, I just want to do it, and I can't, no one can stop me. Nobody can stop me, but if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. If I wanted to add another strip for there for a stamp, for instance, see how pretty that looks? If I just cut I could put a stamp and a sentiment on there. Obviously it's the same colour, but if we're looking at the white, I'm just showing you how we break down the colours. I'm obviously not going to do that. What I'm going to do is put on some 5mm if I can find it. If not, we'll go for 3mm because it's what's in front of me. Just bear with. I've got all of the stuff. Now again, the reason I'm going to use a 5mm over a 2mm is because I want that raise. It means I can tuck stuff underneath. It's just options. All the time when I'm creating, what I'm trying to do is not just aesthetically why I'm doing it, although that is obviously incredibly important, but it's also about what other options is it going to give me. If I lay this panel down flat, that's it. I'm stuck with what I've got. If I raise it and I leave edge room all the way around, I can tuck. So it's giving me extra room to play. And I'm just going to put another one right next to it, just to support the edges, and now I've got loads of room to play. So I'm going to smooth that down, and the next thing I'm going to do is lay it out. Look, how does that happen in the space of 2 seconds, Miss Taz? Let's just ignore it for now. Right, I'm just going to lay it. I'm not sticking it. I've got all of my other layers stuck. I'm not sticking this one because I've got no clue of knowing where I'm going with this card. All I know is that I like the idea of it. Now what you can do as well is create a border strip. It depends what you want to achieve with your card. And I love border strips. And what you can do with that is add an extra panel at the bottom. Now you would do it in a different colour. I wouldn't necessarily tone on tone that, or I could tone on tone it and then add in another layer. And for those ones, if I was doing it that way, which is super pretty, I would be using finger lift tape on those. I wouldn't have any dimension on it at all because I got my dimension on my side panel. So I keep those completely flat. That's just there as an aesthetic. This is there as a tool as well as an aesthetic because it's bringing something in. So you can see how I'm starting to build. Obviously you wouldn't have that little section showing at the side, but you can see how the build starts to create and how we're bringing in essentials and what we're crafting. So I'm just going to get rid of those for a second. What I am going to do is start to bring in some texture and some shape. And I still don't know where I'm going with this, whether it's going to be on the side or the top, but I'm going to play because I loves to play. Let me find some bits and bats. Let me get rid of some of this because I've got an awful lot going on. Right, that piece that I was showing you, that Hessian, I love this Hessian so much. I'm so in love with it. Now, I've got this piece here. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Now, a little switcheroo, something completely different. It's just those play times. I love having corners free. I love a diamond on top of a square because it gives me edgings and it gives me a little bit of playway. Now, if I place that down and I push that diamond up, I can make sense of it. If I leave the diamond pushed all the way down to the bottom and put that on top of it, it makes no sense to me at all. Tiny movements. Give me my diamond back and let it go over the top of the card because I changed the shape of my card entirely in 2 seconds. It's just about making sense of it to me. When I do that and I cover it, there's no point. I'm trying to fit something in. I'm almost trying to I'm trying to make it work. Basically, I'm trying to make fetch happen, and I don't want to make fetch happen. I want it to look gorgeous. So by just taking it up, I've got my tucking room. Remember, we left my tape with that tucking room, so I've got an extra area to work with here, and I can make sense of that diamond. So I hope that makes sense to you guys at home. I am probably going to go in with a paler pink just to cool my tones, and I'll place that there. Now this has no foam on it and it's got no texture on it, so now I can drop it down slightly. You see how the changes happen? So I think I like that quite a lot. So I think I'll carry on and I'll move that up so I get a border at the bottom and a border there. Quite happy with that. I'm okay. That's me sorted. I'm all right with that as that moment goes through. I'm just going to find pin flare. Now don't use pin flare to do this, guys. Make sure when you're doing it at home you're using a red liner or you're using a finger lift. I'm just doing it for speed because I'm aware that time is ticking. So I'm just going to place slightly over the top of that edge. And I've still got my 2 corners to play with. and I've still got my edge here. So now I'm going to commit to this because I'm happy with where I've got. Place it down. I love those backing papers are so rich. Okay, now what I'm doing here again is cooling tones. What I don't want to be I don't want that diamond to be the showstopper. It's just a part of a background. I want it to disappear. It's just about having some tone and some texture, something different to draw the eye away. So it just gives me a bit of extra oomph, really, is I suppose where I'm going. So let's start to look at some of the vignettes that we've got cut and how we bring those together. So I'm going to look at the dove first. Straight in the corner, and I can tuck it. See how we're starting to build? Something happened, didn't it? That's the point, something happened. We just placed one thing down and something happened. And that's the power of Carnation. That's where Carnation becomes different to most other companies, because the vignettes are so strong against the backing papers that are so strong against the perfect papers that are the perfect partner. We're playing, we play with colour and texture, and that's why I love Carnation so much. Now there's other things that I can do as well. One of the things that I just want to look at is quite quickly, I suppose, because we are back on air with you at 1 o'clock, just to let you know, to have a look at the old and new dies, which are the telephone box and the mobile phone. So we're going to be looking at those. So what I can do is introduce a different colour completely, just as a focal point. Now, I mean, I love that. I will tell you, I love that. I love texturally. I love everything about that. I love the complete weirdness of it, the fact that it is such a different colour. On its own and standing on its own, it looks very, very different. It's very poignant. It's got something very sharp about it. When I start adding that in with another piece, something bad happens. And the reason that something bad happens, specifically with the dove, is because I've got so much detailing that's going around that backdrop, and it's such a strong colour against the pink that's behind it, I lose all my detailing of my dove. Take it away, and my dove is my focal point. Put it in, that's my focal point. Where am I playing? What do I want people to see? What visually is important? And that's where I would be looking. So I hope that helps as well. I'm just trying to show you, I suppose, the things that I've learned along the way, sometimes painfully, I'm not going to lie, that have made me stop and choose, you know, a different route when I'm crafting, because we want our cards to look amazing, right? Let me just try and get into this. Honestly, plastic bags are the bane of my life, bane of my life. So I've got my little sentiments sitting in here. Let me see if I can do one without bending it. I'm going to pull all of them out. Hold on. This could be fun, Miss Taz. Just bear with. There we go. Now, the minute I put down a sentiment that says, with heartfelt sympathy, I already know that my card has to align with that sentiment. I can't suddenly come in, you know, with jazz hands and bright lights and different colours, because that's not what a sympathy card is about. We have to be very conscious of what we're crafting at all times. And sometimes laying down your sentiment first is actually the thing that will help you craft the most, because we align ourselves with what we've actually said. So it's a great tip and it works. I'm going to bring in some florals. Apologies for the noise of me opening the bag. Let's have a look at some bits and bats. Right, I love these daisies so much. Let's have a look at some playways. What have we got here? Now, I'm not sticking any of this down, as you can see, and I won't go any further with sticking it because I know we're running short on time. It's more about the experimentation and showing you how I play, because I know it's something I get asked a lot. I genuinely think that people think I don't know how to die cut because I refuse to do it so often, but I promise you I do. Now, I'm just going to pull these. I love these. Never ever let it be said that foliage are just about backgrounds. Look at that. See the power of that? Really simple. Just really pretty. Sometimes less is more. Now I'm just going to add in a couple of lilies, and I'm going to draw them down slightly and just oppose them. just to those edges. See how we're starting to build a bouquet? And let me see if I've got some foliage pieces. I may have used a lot of my foliage. Bring in a rose. I don't want to have the hook on here, so I'm just going to snip that away. Now I would shape this out and I would use pin flare with it, but I'm just going to shape it with my hand because I'm not sticking anything at this point. And I wouldn't stick anything at this point when I was making them at home, and don't with demos, because I just like to see where my spacing is, what's happening, where am I visually, is everything working okay. See how beautiful that is with such little effort. I would cover those hooks, but obviously I'm not sticking it right now, so it's not going to play ball. But let me take away some chaos so you can see where we're starting to build in. Now, one of the other things that you could do with this piece, and I think it would be incredibly valuable to your crafting, using the smaller next one down of the nested dies to cut one of those backing papers in the same colour, one of these backing papers, and to use that as your centre point there. I think that would be super pretty as well. Now, we don't have time at the minute, so I won't sort of go into that too much with you, but that little shock of paper colour that would come into there underneath, I think could be super pretty. It depends where you want to go. I personally like it blank. I love blank spaces. I love white on white. I love chunky foam, you know, but we craft differently, don't we? But to me, there's a real power in having blank space. I love white space. So we call it white space, don't we? Whether it's white or not. Now, alternatively, there are other ways we can use these as well. I do want to show you as many bits as I can before I leave you, because I want you to feel like you are ready to go when you're crafting. On that diamond shape, I can bring in some of those teardrop shapes, and I could theoretically have used those as a background. I'm not going to be able to lift everything now on my diamond, so it's just about placing around and about. So we bring in a smaller amount of colour, put that through, and then we would need to disguise that meeting point, and we would disguise that potentially with, for instance, the love heart, that broken heart charm, which could be here. But I'm starting to get a little bit busy for my liking. I don't dislike it. It reminds me of a bow tie, and that's the first thing that I'm thinking of. But the point is, I've got options, haven't I? I've got playway, and I can use it in different ways. And I love that with Carnation. I love that everything is a jigsaw puzzle that I'm putting together. But I can take that away, take those away. And what I'm actually going to do, I believe, certainly I'm going to attempt, is let's bring in some flutterbys. Not too many. We're not going to overwhelm it. Now, where I put these, as of yet, I wouldn't know. Do I just put one in the centre? To me, it looks really odd. I've always got a funny thing about butterflies when there's just one in the middle, because I never quite know why. So I would need to make sense of it. Now, if I wanted to, what I could do is use the template that Carnation have given us for these butterflies, and I could work out ways of creating that gradient effect. I could build upwards. Look how pretty these are. They're so sweet. And build around. Obviously they'd be stuck, so you'd see it. But we start to get very busy right at the bottom, so I would have to stop at that point. Now, what I would do if I was doing the butterflies at the bottom is take the bigger ones away and bring in the smaller light ones. I would stick to 3. Remember, the rule of 3 is the same for art as it is for photography. Pull that down. And place. So what we're getting is just a tiny backdrop. And to me, that makes more sense. However, what I will say is, I'm not convinced that the butterflies are necessary. I just don't know that they are. Now, if I was doing this at home, I don't think we've got time, so I don't want to keep you too long. If I was doing this at home, if I was getting this ready for demo, and this is how I do my demos, you know, this is how I work everything out. This is where I'm placing and I'm working and I'm doing. I might be tempted to remove the diamond, or what I would be most likely to do at this point, if I was making this and I haven't got one and I haven't got time to cut it, I would cut this and I would cut it in white. And I would use that as my backdrop. Now I have got it cut, I think, over here somewhere, she says. I've got so many bits and pieces. I have got it cut in the cream somewhere. There it is. But to me, I think the cream is going to be too heavy. We'll have a look. Maybe. It's possibly a bit too heavy for me. I think I'd be more inclined to go for white, if I'm totally honest. If I was actually just free falling and being able to do whatever I wanted it, I would cut it in the natural blush papers. That's exactly where I would go with this one. Not the pink, ironically. So there is a pink blush paper, and you'd think with this colour scheme that I would go for the pink and not the natural, but I wouldn't. I would tone it down with that natural colour. But that is the centre point I would use, because to me, I do like having a background piece. I like having that textural element to it. I just don't know that that's the right colour. So I'm going to stick with what I said. I would choose a white or choose the blush so that it matched more in with the idea of the dove and the yellows of those lilies, but not quite so heavy as it is there. But that is where I would end up with my card. I would do it with the white in the centre, and it's annoying me that we haven't got time, but I hope you get the idea of where I'm coming from. Composition is essentially about certain techniques that allow us to kind of work freely. It's weird because we're working within a confine of rules, and a lot of that is like using your diagonal stripe across your card. That really helps because you're using your eye line across. So starting with something at the bottom corner, something at the top corner, and then you've got your visual moving in. That's a really good rule of starting composition because it allows the eye to travel, and that's what you want to happen with a card. The other thing is to leave a very blank white space, so to have your base card, so this piece essentially, this layer, and to actually put nothing else on there except for something in the middle. So we literally blank it out and you just put one piece in the middle. So for instance, if we were doing the dove and we did the outside with a mat and then put the dove on top and just have that. Because honestly, sometimes the least that we take, the least that we put forward, the least that we build, the more impact we have on the card that we're making. Some of the best cards I've ever seen have literally been a blank card, mat's layer and a sentiment. It depends what power you're looking for, and it depends where it's coming from. More importantly than that, it's just looking at your colours. Are you overpowering a card with the colour that you're using? If you're going to stick to Carnation's perfect papers, that's going to be your best friend because you're never going to go wrong. It's when you start introducing those tonal pieces, like your golds, that we start to step back and go, that is not working. So it's just remembering a gold, a very sort of bright gold, stick with your blues. If you're going to go in with things like vellums, where you've got those very soft colours, they work beautifully with pinks. It's just playing. So I hope any of that helped. I hope for those of you who are brand new starters with card making, it gave you some idea about how we cut mats and layers and what we think about when we're doing that, about foam, what depth we use, why we use it. So there's all of those elements that come in with composition. So I hope that was helpful to you all. Just as a reminder, this is the last time on air for the Carnation Crafts Studios that you will see the Held in Our Hearts collection. It is a beautiful, beautiful sympathy collection that we've got called Held in Our Hearts. This is a full collection which does incorporate all of the elements that you've seen me use today. It is on 221101. It is a show price today of $99.99 with a P&P that is free. However, if you type in the code HIOH10, you will get 10% off. If you want to get yourself the Hessian Edge nested dies. My brain went. The Hessian hedge dies that we've got there. That is a full collection there of 129.99, again with free P&P. The number for that is 221110. And if you want to add in your perfect papers that you've seen me using today, then you'll find those on the website as well. They're $14.99 with free P&P. But if you do buy them independently on your own, because they're under £50, you will pay a $2.95 shipping charge on those. If you put all of those in your basket at once, the subtotal today will be $244.97. If you remember to use the code, that's going to knock £24.50 off, and you're going to get it for £220.47. Just to let you know that you can also make 4 payments through ClearPay, or you can make 3 payments through PayPal, so you can break those payments up as well. Just to remind you all, we will be back at 1 o'clock. We're going to have a look at the old and new die sets, the Crafter Selects that came out. It'll be a much quicker show for those ones. I will just show you the phone box and then the mobile phone. Again, I hope today helped. I hope you have a really nice lunch, and we will go and have lunch, and we will see you at the other side. Take care till then. Thank you.